Single dad janitor took a job. No one lasted. Ian then quietly turned the CEO's world upside down. I said, "No pink plates." The sharp sound of shattering glass rang across the penthouse like a thunderclap. The silence that followed was suffocating. The maid froze mid-step, eyes wide as the tiny porcelain shards spun across the marble floor. Sloane Marchand didn't flinch. She simply lowered her gaze to the trembling server and repeated, "I specifically asked for white, with gold trim." The woman nodded quickly, mumbling apologies, and scurried away. Across the room in the massive open living area where no toy was ever allowed out of its designated drawer, Isla sat silently on the edge of an oversized armchair. Legs crossed neatly, dress perfect, hair immaculate, face empty. Sloane glanced at her daughter. 8 years old, going on 40. "You know we have guests this evening," Sloane said, crossing the room, her heels clicking like metronomes. "Don't embarrass yourself." "I won't," Isla replied quietly. No loud voices, no strange questions, no hiding under tables. "I know," Sloane sighed, "and no whining about Miss Claudia leaving." Isla's gaze flickered for the briefest moment. Claudia, the 7th nanny this year, had quit just 2 hours ago without warning, and without leaving Isla a goodbye note. "I wasn't going to whine," Isla murmured. "I already knew she would leave." That stopped Sloane cold. She turned brows furrowed. "What does that mean?" Isla didn't answer. Instead, she looked past her mother through the towering glass windows at the clouds rolling in over Manhattan. The city was about to drown in rain. Sloane's phone buzzed. She snatched it up like it had personally offended her. "Yes." A pause. Then, "You've got to be kidding me." The board moved the quarterly up to 6. "I'm not ready." She turned toward Isla, exasperated. "Do not go anywhere. I'll have someone from downstairs watch you until I'm back. Don't touch anything. Don't talk to strangers." "I'm not a baby," Isla said, but it was more to the window than to her mother. Sloane was already gone, phone clamped to her ear, voice rising. 20 minutes later, Isla sat alone in the lobby, her knees drawn up to her chest. Rain fell like silver needles beyond the glass doors. She said nothing to the concierge, nothing to the doorman, nothing to the security guard who tried to offer her hot cocoa. Until a man with worn work boots, rolled-up sleeves, and calloused hands stepped out of the janitor's supply closet, pushing a mop bucket. He noticed her, and he didn't speak right away. That's what made her look up. "Rough day, huh?" he said finally, his voice low, calm like soft gravel on an old country road. Isla didn't respond. He crouched down beside her, careful not to get the floor dirty. "You look like someone just told you the tooth fairy got audited." Isla blinked. He smiled. "No. Too soon for tax jokes." Still nothing. He stood up, about to leave, when something in his mop bucket caught her eye. It was a plush turtle, slightly frayed around the edges, but intact. "Where did you get that?" Isla asked quietly, her voice barely above the hum of the rain. The man turned, surprised as she spoke. "This little guy." He held it up, found him stuck behind the vending machine. Must have been there since last winter. Isla stared at it. Then, without thinking, she stood and walked toward him. The man paused, then offered the turtle. He looked lost. Isla took it slowly, then hugged it tightly to her chest. Her eyes welled up with something old and unfamiliar. "Thank you," she whispered. He tilted his head. "You're welcome, kiddo." A moment passed. "What's his name?" he asked. She looked at the turtle, then back at the man. "His name is Walter," she said softly. Walter. Solid name. Better than Mr. Mop, he added, motioning to his bucket. He's not much of a conversationalist. Isla gave a tiny, almost imperceptible smile. That's when the elevator doors opened with a ding. Sloane stepped out still mid-conference call. Her heels clicked toward the lobby before she stopped abruptly at the sight of Isla standing beside a janitor holding a stuffed animal. Sloane lowered her phone from her ear slowly. What is going on here? The janitor stood straightening up. Evening, ma'am. She was sitting alone. Looked upset. Just thought she could use a friend. I didn't authorize anyone to speak to my daughter. He met her gaze calmly. Understood. She spoke to me. Isla clutched Walter tighter. Sloane narrowed her eyes. Who are you? Name's Liam Hayes. I do night maintenance in this building. I don't recall hiring you. I'm not hired by you. The building contracts out. I just clean. Sloane's jaw tightened. She looked down at Isla, then at Walter. Come, Isla, she said curtly. Isla hesitated, then walked slowly toward her mother's eyes, still on Liam. Say goodbye, Sloane prompted. Isla glanced up at Liam. Thank you for finding Walter. He smiled. Anytime, kiddo. Take care of him. He's got a soft heart for people who need it. And just before she disappeared into the elevator, Isla turned and said something no one in the building had heard her say in weeks. Good night, Mr. Liam. The concierge dropped his pen. The doorman stopped mid-nod. And Sloane looked at her daughter like she was seeing her for the first time in months. The doors closed. Liam turned back to his mop, but he paused just long enough to smile to himself. He didn't know it yet, but something had just cracked open in the Marchand Empire, and it started with a turtle named Walter. You didn't speak to anyone else, right? Sloane's voice sliced through the silence like a polished scalpel. Her hand rested lightly on Isla's shoulder as the elevator ascended, the numbers blinking overhead. Isla didn't respond. I asked you a question, Sloane said, turning slightly. Isla's voice was barely a whisper. No, Mama. The woman exhaled slowly, brushing an imaginary crease from her sleeve. Good. People like that don't belong in our conversations. Isla held Walter tighter. The next morning, Liam arrived at the lobby a few minutes early. Rain still clung to the sidewalk like reluctant memories. He wheeled his cart past the concierge desk with a casual nod. Morning, Gus. Liam Gus replied, glancing over his glasses. You're already the talk of the building. Oh, Kid called you by name last night. People noticed. Liam chuckled. Didn't think kindness came with surveillance. Here everything comes with surveillance, including kindness. He smiled, but his eyes dimmed. Liam knew that tone. He'd used it once back when he wore a badge instead of pushing a mop, back when everything he did was watched, weighed, and questioned. Now, no one noticed the janitor, except one little girl. Later that afternoon, Sloane paced through the hallway outside, her penthouse phone pressed to her ear, stilettos clicking in rhythm with her rising frustration. I don't care what your agency says, I need a replacement today. Not tomorrow. Not end of week. Today. Her assistant's voice on the other end was tinny and nervous. No, I'm not interested in someone who only speaks Mandarin. Isla already sees her therapist in French and practices piano in Italian. She needs stability, not another accent. Sloane ended the call with a snap. She turned to head back inside and stopped. Isla was sitting on the hallway floor just outside the door, her shoes off, Walter in her lap, and she was smiling at something, no someone. Liam was crouched on the other side of the hallway, pretending to tighten a wall vent with a mini screwdriver. "Careful with that one," he said, lowering his voice as if sharing a classified secret. "He gets fussy if you forget to say goodnight." Isla giggled. "He already told me. He likes warm blankets, too." Smart turtle. Sloane's expression hardened. "Excuse me," she said sharply, stepping into view. Liam stood up slowly. "Morning, ma'am. I don't know how things work wherever you're from, but where I'm from, janitors don't loiter and chat with residents' children." Liam didn't flinch. "Wasn't loitering, Miss Marchand." She spoke first. Convenient. He looked at Isla, then back at her mother. She just needed a smile. "Sometimes that's all it takes to get through the day." Sloane's voice dropped into something colder. "If I need therapy for my daughter, I have world-class professionals on speed dial. I don't need a mop-wielding philosopher diagnosing her emotional well-being in my hallway." Liam nodded once. "Understood. Just doing my job." Then he pushed his cart past her, never looking back. That night, Isla sat in bed with her knees up, staring at the ceiling. Walter was nestled under her arm. Sloane sat at the edge of the bed, scrolling on her tablet. "Did you finish your reading?" "Yes." "And piano, yes. Did you write in your gratitude journal?" Isla paused. "I'm grateful for Liam." Sloane's fingers froze on the screen. "Who the man with the turtle? He talks like he doesn't want anything." Sloane set the tablet down. "You're not to talk to him anymore." "Why?" "Because he's not part of our life." "Isla, he doesn't belong here." Isla's voice was quiet but sharp. "Neither do I." Sloane blinked. It was the kind of sentence you never expect from an 8-year-old. It cracked something she didn't know was brittle. "Lights out," she said too quickly, brushing hair from Isla's forehead and kissing it like a routine, not a ritual. She turned off the light. Outside the door, her breath caught before she walked away. 2 days later, Liam was replacing a hallway light on the 21st floor when a voice echoed from behind him. "Mr. Liam?" He turned, surprised. "Hey there." Isla was barefoot, holding a drawing. "I made this for you." She handed him a crayon-sketched picture of a turtle, a mop, and what appeared to be a very tall woman frowning in the background. "Is that me?" he asked, pointing at the mop. Isla giggled. "No, that's your sidekick." He smiled wide. "Walter will be honored." She hesitated before adding, "You can't keep it. Mama says our world doesn't mix with yours." Liam looked at her. "Then how about I borrow it for a little while?" She nodded. He leaned closer and whispered, "You're a good kid. Isla, you got a big heart. Don't ever shrink it for people who forget how to see it." A tear slipped down her cheek before she could stop it. Liam's hand hovered midair. He didn't touch her, just stayed still. Present. Sometimes presence is the most powerful touch of all. Behind them, a security camera blinked red, and far above them, someone else finally started watching. Not just the cameras, but her daughter. Sloane stood at the edge of the building's observation deck, wind tugging her coat. She scrolled through her phone, stopped at a photo. It was from a year ago. Isla, stiff in a white dress at a gala. No smile, no sparkle. A girl raised in gold, starved of warmth. She swiped again. Another photo. Isla laughing at the beach 3 years ago, the last time they had taken a trip before Sloane's company went public. A voice from behind broke her silence. "You keep looking for your daughter in those photos," said her longtime friend and CFO Evelyn, stepping beside her. "Maybe it's time you try seeing her in real life." Sloane didn't respond, but something in her tightened, and she wasn't sure whether it was anger or guilt. Meanwhile, back on the 21st floor, Walter the Turtle had been given a new job. He sat proudly on a shelf in the janitor's closet, next to a sticky note that read, "Never underestimate the quiet ones. They're often the ones who listen best." And Liam. He looked out the narrow utility window toward the glittering city, unaware that a storm far greater than the last was on its way. But for now, he smiled, because for the first time in years, someone had drawn him. "You want him," to what Evelyn nearly dropped her coffee. Her voice echoed off the glass walls of Sloane's corner office, interrupting the quiet hum of March on Global's morning rhythm. Sloane didn't look up from her screen. "I want him to watch Isla for a few hours until the agency sends someone qualified." "You mean the janitor?" "He's not a criminal, Evie. He's just a man with a mop. You've spent your whole career making sure people like him never get past security, and now you're handing him your daughter Sloane closed her laptop with a snap." "No, I'm not handing him anything. I'm buying myself time. Claudia's gone. Isla won't speak to anyone else, and I have a shareholder call in 90 minutes that could cost us 3 countries' worth of contracts." Evelyn crossed her arms. And does he know Sloane's silence was the answer? Liam didn't hear his name. He heard his pager, and that only meant one thing in this building, either a burst pipe or a rich person making an odd request. Today, it was the latter. He stepped into the executive floor like a ghost among glass and power suits. The receptionist pointed him toward Sloane's private wing, eyes narrowed like she was watching a lab experiment unfold. Sloane met him outside her office. "No pleasantries. I need a favor, a temporary one." Liam raised an eyebrow. "You want me to fix something?" "No, I want you to be something." He waited. She inhaled sharply. "Isla won't speak to anyone. Not the new therapist, not the interim nanny. But she talks to you." Liam shifted his weight. "I didn't ask her to." "You didn't have to. That's why I'm asking you now." There was a pause. Then she added, "I'll pay you, generously. Name your rate." Liam looked down the hallway toward the playroom Isla sometimes escaped to. "This isn't about money for me." Sloane tilted her head. "Then what is it about?" He didn't answer right away. Just met her eyes and said, "Sometimes people don't need a new professional. They just need someone who doesn't walk away." She stiffened. Then without another word, she opened the playroom door. Inside, Isla sat cross-legged on the floor, building a tiny city out of magnetic tiles. When she saw Liam, her face lit up just a flicker, but it was enough to make every brick of Sloane's carefully constructed detachment tremble. The first hour was awkward. Liam sat on the floor watching Isla build. He didn't instruct, didn't lecture. He just was. "You ever build a fort?" she asked suddenly. "Only the kind made of couch cushions and a whole lot of parental regret." Isla giggled. "This one has a secret door." "Secret doors are important," he said. "The best ones always open when you think no one sees you." She nodded seriously. "Do you have a secret door?" Liam paused, then smiled. "Sure do. Mine's called jazz music. Every time I listen to Coltrane, I disappear." Isla tilted her head. "Is that why you hum sometimes?" "You caught me." They both laughed, and in that small sound, something old and broken inside, Isla let out a sigh. Later that evening, after the board call ended in victory and another deal was inked, Sloane returned to the playroom expecting chaos or silence. What she found was music. Soft trumpet notes floated from a Bluetooth speaker Isla had never used before. Liam sat beside her daughter, showing her how to snap her fingers in rhythm. Isla was smiling. No iPad, no piano scales, no posture corrections. Just a child being a child. Sloane stood frozen in the doorway. And for a moment, just a moment, she didn't know if she was watching a stranger heal her daughter, or watching her daughter finally come alive. That night, Liam packed up his things. Isla tugged at his sleeve. "Will you be here tomorrow? I don't think your mama's the type to ask for help twice." "But I do." He looked at her. "Then I guess I will." She beamed. Sloane stood by the elevator, arms crossed, but her posture had softened. Just a little. "You're not a babysitter," she said as the doors opened. "No," Liam replied, "but I've been a dad long enough to know when a kid needs one." Sloane's lips tightened. "Where's your daughter now?" He stepped into the elevator. "With her aunt, in Pennsylvania. Safer there. For now. For now." He looked at her, and for the first time something shadowed his face. Not mystery, not charm, just history. Sometimes life doesn't let you stay where you're needed most. The doors closed. Evelyn confronted Sloane in the hallway the next morning. "You let him come back." "I did." "Why?" "Because Isla asked." Evelyn blinked, and since when do you listen to 8-year-olds, Sloane didn't answer. Instead, she looked down the hallway where Isla was giggling, as Liam tried to balance a stack of puzzle boxes on his head. "I don't trust him yet," she said finally, "but I trust what she becomes when she's near him. And for someone like Sloane Marchand..." That was the most vulnerable thing she'd said in years. By the end of the week, Liam had rearranged more than just the furniture in the playroom. He'd brought in jazz records, a second-hand globe, a stack of his daughter's old books dog-eared and full of underlines. And when Isla asked him why he read so much, he said, "Because stories know how to stay, even when people don't." That night, after Isla was tucked in, Sloane stood outside her daughter's room. She didn't go in. She just listened. Laughter, music, and a voice saying softly, "You're not hard to love, kid. You just needed someone to see you before you were perfect." Sloane closed her eyes, and for the first time in months, she didn't feel like the richest woman in the building. She felt like the one who had the most to learn. "You know this thing's older than most people's marriages, right?" Liam knocked twice on the side panel of the service elevator, then leaned in to listen. The soft hum of the shaft vibrated beneath his feet like a reluctant sigh. "You talk to elevators now?" Isla asked, her tiny hands gripping the handle of his supply cart. "Only the ones with trust issues," he grinned. "This one, she's temperamental, needs coaxing, like Mama when the press calls." Liam burst into laughter, caught off guard by her timing. "You're dangerous, kid." Isla beamed, proud of herself. Then she looked up. "Do you ever get scared when something won't move the way it's supposed to?" Liam paused. Not because he didn't have an answer, because he had too many. "Yeah," he said finally, "but sometimes. Stillness is just the world asking you to pay attention." She nodded thoughtfully, as if storing that in the same mental drawer where she kept multiplication tables and turtle facts. The elevator doors creaked closed, but the cabin didn't budge. "See," Liam said. "Told you she needs sweet talk." He hit the emergency stop button, then glanced at his watch. "Looks like we're stuck for a bit." "Are you mad?" "Nope." "Why not?" "Because you brought peanut butter crackers." She grinned and opened her backpack. "Want one?" He took it gently. "You always come prepared." Claudia used to say, "I pack like someone who doesn't trust the world." Liam looked at her. "And what do you think?" She shrugged. "I just don't like being surprised. Surprises usually mean someone leaves." He didn't answer right away, just unwrapped the cracker and broke it in half. "Here's the deal," he said, holding one half out. If you keep sharing snacks and wisdom like that, people won't be able to leave even if they tried. Isla took the piece, then asked quietly, "Did someone leave you?" Liam nodded. "Yeah, but not because they wanted to. Life has a way of pulling people apart when they least expect it. Your daughter." His chest tightened. "Her name's Rosie. She's 10. Loves science experiments and making messes. She's safe with my sister. Just not with me." "Why not?" He looked down at his boots. "Because sometimes when grown-ups break something inside themselves, they try to fix it alone. And that can take a long time. Are you fixing it now?" He looked at her. "Really?" "Looked? I think I am. One elevator ride at a time." Meanwhile, on the 42nd floor, Evelyn slammed a folder on Sloane's desk. "You lost him." Sloane didn't look up. "Define lost. Your daughter. The janitor. Not missing. The concierge hasn't seen either of them in an hour." Sloane stood immediately. "Check the cameras." "Already did." "They're in the west elevator." It stalled. Sloane grabbed her phone and keys. "Call maintenance." Evelyn narrowed her eyes. "You mean besides him?" Sloane hesitated. "Then call real maintenance." Evelyn said nothing, but her expression said plenty. Back in the stuck elevator, Isla sat cross-legged drawing on a crumpled napkin with a red crayon she found in her backpack. Liam watched as she carefully outlined a building, a tall one like their own, with a single bright window near the top. Inside, a small figure stood holding something. "What's that?" he asked. "That's you." "And what am I holding?" She hesitated. "Hope." He smiled softly. "That's a heavy thing to carry. I think you're strong enough." Silence stretched between them, warm and fragile. Then Isla added, "Sometimes I think Mama forgot how to hope." Liam exhaled through his nose. Maybe she didn't forget. Maybe she just got tired of being disappointed. Isla nodded, not like a child agreeing with an adult, but like a soul that understood. "Do you know what Mama said the first time I cried in public?" Liam shook his head. She said, "Don't ever show the world your cracks. They'll only press harder." Liam's jaw tightened. Sounds like she thought cracks were weaknesses. "Isn't that true?" "No," Liam said. "Cracks are proof you've lived through something." He tapped the elevator wall gently. "Even this old machine has cracks, and it still holds people when they need it." 10 minutes later, the elevator jerked with a groan. Isla gripped the sidebar, startled. "Are we falling?" "Nope," Liam said, standing and pressing the intercom button. "That's the sound of progress." A scratchy voice came through the speaker elevators back online. "You two okay in there?" Liam looked at Isla. "We're more than okay." The cabin rumbled upward. When the doors opened, Sloane stood in the hallway with her arms crossed. Her eyes scanned Isla, first healthy, safe, calm. Then her gaze landed on Liam. She opened her mouth, but before she could say anything, Isla ran forward and wrapped her arms around her mother's waist. "I wasn't scared," she said. "Liam was with me." Sloane froze. Isla pulled back, looking up. "You know he hums jazz when the lights flicker, and he keeps crackers in his pocket just in case." Sloane glanced at Liam. "Crackers, emergency carbs," he said. Then Isla did something unexpected. She took her mother's hand, placed the crayon drawing into her palm, and whispered, "Mama, I think you should let someone hold your hope, too." Sloane didn't speak, but her fingers closed around the napkin like it was made of gold. That night, Liam stood in the service hallway putting his tools away. Evelyn approached quietly. "You keep changing the rules," she said. "I just clean, remember." She smiled. "No, you don't. And that's the problem." He looked at her. "You ever wish someone saw you before you became who you had to be?" Evelyn blinked. Every single day. He nodded, then added softly, maybe that's why we're all stuck in different elevators hoping someone pushes the right button. High above in her penthouse office, Sloane sat alone at her desk. The city blinked beneath her. In front of her sat the crayon drawing, and for the first time in years, she didn't feel so afraid of her cracks, because maybe, just maybe, she'd started to believe that broken things don't always stay broken. Sometimes they hold people. You don't strike me as the kind of man who lets himself disappear. Sloane's voice was calm, but her eyes said otherwise, tight with questions, curious in a way that almost felt personal. Liam didn't look up from Isla's coloring book. You mean disappear on purpose or just fade out of focus? Sloane folded her arms. Either. Both. They were standing in the rooftop garden of Marchand Global, a place no employee visited without permission. Ela had discovered it by accident, chasing a butterfly she claimed, and since then it had become her cloud place. Now, Liam sat cross-legged on the bench, Isla beside him, drawing a lopsided giraffe with a unicorn horn. Sloane was still standing, too elegant for this wild patch of green. But she hadn't left yet. That was saying something. "You're not like the others," she said suddenly. Liam chuckled. "You mean I don't dress like my watch costs more than a mortgage? I mean, you're not trying to impress anyone. And yet, people notice you anyway." He met her gaze finally. "Funny thing about being invisible, Miss Marchand, it teaches you how to really see." Earlier that week, Isla had asked a question Liam hadn't expected. "Do you ever miss her?" They were playing Jenga in the employee lounge, an odd sacred time after hours when the building felt like it belonged to them alone. Liam hesitated. "Who, Rosie's mom?" He exhaled slowly. "Every day, even when I try not to." What happened, Liam didn't answer right away. He carefully removed a wooden block from the tower, set it on top. She was sick. We didn't know how sick until it was too late. "Did you love her?" "I still do. Love doesn't get revoked just because time moves on." Isla's voice dropped to a whisper. "Do you think my mom knows how to love?" That stopped him cold. He looked her in the eye. "I think your mom learned to love by surviving. And sometimes when you learn it that way, you forget the part where it's supposed to feel safe." Sloane stayed longer in the rooftop garden than she meant to. Maybe it was the quiet. Maybe it was the way Isla giggled when Liam made up ridiculous animal names, jellyfant, snailigator, paratoad. Maybe it was because this was the first time she'd seen her daughter relaxed in weeks. And maybe it was because she was tired of only showing up for the parts that could be scheduled. Sloane sat down beside them slowly, like someone learning to trust a chair again. Isla handed her a purple crayon. "Draw something with us." Sloane blinked. "Sweetheart, I haven't drawn since—" "Doesn't matter," Isla said. "Just pick a color and start." And just like that, Sloane found herself drawing a tree. A very ugly tree, with square leaves. Isla looked at it, tilting her head. "It's abstract," she offered gently. Liam stifled a laugh. Sloane rolled her eyes. "I'm better with spreadsheets." Liam replied, "Funny, I'm terrible with those. But I've been told I'm excellent with crayons and coffee stains." Later, as Isla dozed off on the bench beside them, Sloane looked out over the city lights. "Why are you really here, Liam?" He raised an eyebrow. "I told you. Pipes, light bulbs, juice boxes." "No, here, in this building, with my daughter." Liam's voice was quieter now, because for the first time in a long time someone looked at me and didn't see failure. Sloane didn't flinch, but she didn't speak either. He continued. I've worked a lot of jobs, some with name tags, some without. But this, what I do with Isla, it feels like more than fixing things. It feels like making space for things to grow." Sloane turned toward him, her voice soft, unguarded. "Do you resent me for not seeing it sooner?" He smiled, gently, kindly. Not everyone sees the same stars from their side of the city. They sat in silence after that. But it wasn't empty. It was full of every question they hadn't asked and every answer they weren't ready to say aloud. The next morning, Evelyn stormed into Sloane's office holding a file. "Problem?" Sloane didn't look up. "Isla's fine. This isn't about Isla." She placed the folder on the desk. Liam's background, his old life, his certifications, his arrest years ago. Charges dropped, but still there in black and white. Sloane flipped through it. An engineering degree from Caltech, a glowing service record from a Fortune 500 before he disappeared off the map 5 years ago. "Why didn't you tell me this earlier?" Sloane asked. Evelyn's voice dropped. "Because I wanted to see if your instincts still worked. And you weren't wrong to trust him. But you'd better prepare for what happens when he finds out you've read this." Sloane closed the file. Her fingers lingered on the photo paper. A younger Liam, bright-eyed, confident, wearing a suit, and beside him, a woman, Rosie's mother. That evening, Sloane found Liam in the break room fixing the broken vending machine Isla had dubbed the mean candy box. She handed him the file. I read it. He didn't open it, just nodded. "I didn't want you to find out this way," she added. He shrugged. "Doesn't matter how people find out, only what they do with it." Sloane spoke quieter now. "I didn't realize who you used to be." Liam finally looked up, and for once there was no grin, no warm reply, just a man tired of being remembered only by what he lost. "I'm not who I used to be, and I'm not trying to be. What I am is someone who finally stopped running from the parts of himself that hurt," Sloane whispered. "So why this building?" Liam looked at her for a long moment. "Because I wanted to prove that even after falling, you can still matter, even if nobody claps when you do." Sloane didn't say anything as he walked past her, but she looked at the file one last time. Then she dropped it in the shredder. Because some stories didn't need to be archived, they needed to be lived again, this time with new endings. "Isla asked me what forgiveness feels like," Sloane whispered. The city was hushed in the dark behind her penthouse windows, its pulse reduced to scattered lights blinking like old secrets. Her voice barely carried in the silence of her office where Liam stood quietly across from her drying his hands with a paper towel after fixing the sink. Again. Liam tilted his head. "And what did you tell her?" I said. "I didn't know." He nodded slowly. "At least you didn't lie." She turned to face him, arms wrapped tightly around herself. "I think I forgot how to be soft, Liam, somewhere along the climb." He studied her for a long second. "Then, climbing doesn't make you hard. It's the things you lose on the way up that do." She sat down on the edge of the couch, exhausted in a way only lonely people understand. "I used to believe love was a liability, that to let someone in was to give them a knife with your name on it. And now..." She looked at him. Her voice almost broke. "Now I think the real danger is never letting anyone in at all." Earlier that day, Sloane had arrived home late, too late. She'd missed Isla's school presentation, the one she promised she'd attend. The apartment was dark, the only sound the hum of the fridge and the ticking of the hallway clock that had once belonged to her mother. On the dining table was a drawing. 3 people. a girl in the middle with two big hands holding hers on each side. One said Liam. One said Mom. Above them were 3 words scrawled in blocky red crayon, "Better together always." Sloane stood there a long time. Then she sat in the kitchen, stared at the drawing under the soft glow of the stove light, and wept. Now, as Liam reached for his jacket ready to leave, she stopped him. "Can I ask you something?" He paused. "Always." She hesitated. Then, "What did you mean when you said you weren't trying to be who you used to be?" Liam exhaled through his nose, a faint smile tugging at the edge of his mouth. "When Rosie's mom died, people lined up to say all the right things. You'll heal. You'll be okay. She'd want you to move on." You know what I realized. What grief doesn't want to be solved. It wants to be witnessed. Sloane swallowed hard, and after a while the hardest part wasn't the pain, it was pretending I wasn't still carrying it. She nodded, as if those words had unlocked a door she didn't know was closed inside her. Liam continued, voice lower now. "So, no, I'm not trying to be that man again." He was brilliant, sure, but he also thought love was something he had to earn with perfect performance. He met her eyes. "This time, I'm trying to love without proving anything." The next morning, Isla knocked gently on Sloane's bedroom door. Mom Sloane was already awake, sitting on the edge of the bed, her phone in hand. The school presentation video paused at the 5-minute mark. She opened the door, blinking back tears. "I saw the video," she said softly. Isla's face dropped. "You were supposed to be there." "I know, and I'll never get that moment back." "But I watched the whole thing 3 times. You were magnificent." Isla looked up. "You really mean that Sloane knelt in front of her daughter, took both her hands in hers?" "I mean it more than I've meant anything in years." There was a long pause. Then Isla asked, "Do you think Liam's proud of me too?" Sloane smiled gently. "I think Liam's proud of who you are, not just what you do." Isla's lips curved upward. "He says people are like radios. Some just need help finding their frequency." Sloane blinked at the simplicity and brilliance of the metaphor. That sounds exactly like something he'd say. Later that day, Sloane called Evelyn into her office. "I want to restructure the mentorship program." Evelyn raised an eyebrow that the board already rejected. "Then we'll try again, but this time we'll bring Liam into the room." "You mean, officially, yes. He's the reason Isla is thriving. I want him to help us design something real, not just corporate fluff." Evelyn folded her arms. "You know what they'll say." Sloane leaned forward. "Let them. This company was built by people who started with nothing. We're not going to forget that." Evelyn's tone softened. "What changed?" Sloane looked out the window. "I stopped mistaking power for safety, and I started listening to the janitor who's been teaching my daughter how to feel again." That night, Sloane stood at the edge of Isla's bed, brushing her daughter's hair off her forehead as she slept. The city was still pulsing outside, but something inside her had finally settled. And for the first time in years, she didn't reach for her laptop. She just stood there, watching the quiet miracle she nearly missed because she thought success only looked like numbers. Downstairs, Liam sat in the break room sipping cheap coffee, flipping through a notebook filled with doodles Isla had left him. Evelyn walked in carrying a folder. "You're on the list." He looked up. "What list?" "The official team for the new mentorship initiative. You're being brought in as an advisor." Liam blinked. "You're serious?" She nodded. "Sloane wants to build something real. From the inside out." He looked down at the notebook, then back at Evelyn. "Does this mean I have to start wearing ties again?" Evelyn smirked. God, I hope not. She paused, then added more quietly, People like you remind us that the bottom of the building doesn't mean the bottom of the story. Liam stared at her, the words sinking in like a bomb. And somewhere inside him, something shifted. Not because he was finally being seen, but because he realized he'd never stopped being someone worth seeing. You're Liam Cole, right? The janitor with the golden heart? The voice came sharp, slicing through the lobby air like a cold front. Liam looked up from Isla's spilled juice box to see a tall man in an expensive navy suit, slicked hair-square jaw, and arrogance that had clearly been trained in elite boardrooms. Behind him stood two others equally overdressed and underwhelming. Liam straightened. Depends who's asking. The man stepped closer, smirking. Jason Hale, head of acquisitions, and Sloane's ex-fiancée. Liam's eyes flickered for just a second. Not out of jealousy, out of calculation. Congratulations, Liam said coolly. I assume that's an ex by choice. Hers. Jason chuckled. Touché. Word travels fast around here, Cole. People are saying you're climbing fast, from janitor to confidant. That's impressive. Liam kept his tone even. I'm not climbing. I'm staying still. It's the rest of the world that finally paused long enough to notice. Jason stepped closer, lowering his voice. Let me make something clear. This company doesn't reward sob stories. Whatever game you're playing with Sloane and her daughter, it won't last. You'll always be the man with the mop. Liam didn't flinch. Instead, he leaned in just enough to say one thing. Then maybe the world needs more men with mops. We're the ones cleaning up what people like you leave behind. Upstairs, Sloane was already pacing. Evelyn stood by the window, arms crossed. They're circling. Jason the board. They're questioning everything. Your decision to bring Liam in. The mentorship program. Even Isla's presence in the building. Sloane exhaled. Let them question it. You don't get it, Evelyn snapped. They don't want truth. They want control. And Liam, he's not controllable. Sloane sat down, her voice quieter now. That's exactly why we need him. That afternoon, Liam returned to the mentorship pilot room, a repurposed design lab now humming with energy. Dozens of new interns, many from underrepresented backgrounds, were being paired with senior execs and volunteers. But today, something felt off. The whiteboard that used to have "Build from the bottom up" written in Isla's colorful handwriting had been erased. And in its place a slick digital logo, Vision 21, powered by Marchand Global. The soul had been swapped for branding. He found Evelyn near the door. "What is this?" he asked, gesturing to the walls. She looked uncomfortable. "They're rebranding the program." Jason pulled some strings, said it needed a marketable edge. Liam's jaw clenched. "This wasn't supposed to be about image. It's still your vision," she said. "Just polished." Liam looked around the room. None of the interns looked at ease anymore. They looked watched, judged. He turned to Evelyn. "You can polish a mirror until it shines, but if the reflection's fake, it's still a lie." That night, Liam didn't go home. Instead, he sat in the rooftop garden, the cold air settling in his bones. He stared at the city skyline, fists clenched. How easy it had been for someone like Jason to twist what was meant to heal into a product to sell. Footsteps behind him. He didn't turn. "I figured you'd be here," Sloane said softly. He kept his eyes forward. Didn't expect the CEO herself to visit the rooftop janitors club twice. Sloane sat beside him without a word. For a long time, neither spoke. Then she broke the silence. "They're voting tomorrow. I know. If the board wins, the program becomes theirs. Liam, this is bigger than you and me. They'll erase everything you built." Liam turned to her slowly. "Then let them. If it's built right, it'll grow again somewhere else. The seed matters more than the soil." She stared at him, heart in her throat. "You don't understand. They're trying to discredit you. They dug up your past again. They're whispering things about Isla, too. About me." Liam stood, his voice low but steady. "Then let them whisper. The truth doesn't need a megaphone, it just needs to stay standing." Sloane followed him with her eyes. "You're not angry, I am," he admitted. "But not at them. I'm angry I thought we could protect this without a fight." She stood too. "Then let's fight." Liam looked at her. Really looked at her, the exhaustion in her shoulders, the quiet defiance in her spine. "You're not who you were when we met." Sloane gave a soft, breathless laugh. "Neither are you." The next morning, the boardroom was packed. Jason Hale sat at the head of the table, smug as ever. "We're here to vote on the future of the mentorship initiative." He began tapping the sleek presentation behind him. "As proposed by Mr. Cole, though, let's be honest, janitorial staff shouldn't be steering our strategic direction." Murmurs rippled. Then Sloane stood. "I'd like to speak." Jason raised an eyebrow. "You can file a rebuttal after the vote. I said I'd like to speak." The room quieted. Sloane walked to the front, held up a single sheet of paper. "This is a handwritten letter from one of our interns. Her name's Danny. She was living in her car 2 months ago. She's now leading a prototype design team that reduced our product costs by 12%. She looked around the room. "This isn't a charity project. This is what innovation looks like when you trust people at every level." She turned to Liam, who stood silently by the wall. "And the man you're trying to erase, he didn't just fix pipes. He fixed people. He gave my daughter back her smile." Silence. Then Evelyn stood. "I vote yes." One by one, hands followed. The motion passed. Jason scowled. But Liam, he didn't smile. He just walked out quietly down the hall where Isla was waiting, holding a crayon sign that read, "Keep building." And he did. It was one of those mornings when the sun filtered through the blinds like quiet hope. The kind of light that makes you believe healing isn't loud, it's slow, patient, and inevitable. Liam sat on the kitchen floor, his back against the cabinet, a spoon in one hand and a cereal box in the other, as Isla balanced her favorite book on her knees beside him. She wasn't reading it, just staring at the cover. "Do you think people always become what they want to be?" she asked suddenly. Liam turned curious. "That's a big question for this early in the morning." She shrugged. "I used to think you were just the janitor, but now you're kind of like someone who makes people remember who they are." He blinked. "That's a very specific job title." She looked up at him. "I think maybe that's what you were always supposed to be. A reminder." Meanwhile, across the city, Sloane was facing her own kind of question. She stood in front of a mirror adjusting her blazer, but it felt like armor now, too stiff, too defensive. Ela had drawn a picture the night before of a garden. In the middle was a tall sunflower labeled Mom, and underneath it grows slower but reaches higher. Sloane couldn't stop thinking about that. She no longer wanted to lead by towering above others. She wanted to lead by standing with them. Later that day, Sloane visited the pilot mentorship hub where Liam was now officially seated at a desk that had no nameplate, but somehow felt like it belonged to him. He was reviewing applications, a cup of black coffee by his elbow, Isla's crayon drawings taped neatly on the wall behind him. "I've never seen anyone make a clipboard look noble," she said from the doorway. He smiled without turning. Paper has power. Ask any poet. She stepped closer, quiet for a moment. Then Liam. I want to try something different. He looked up. I want to restructure the leadership team. Build something new, something that reflects what we've started. I don't just want to give you a seat at the table. I want you to help design the table. Liam stared at her. Why me? She met his eyes. Because you taught me that power means nothing unless it makes someone else stronger. He took a long breath. And if I say no, I'll respect that she said. But I'll still steal your best ideas over lunch. Liam chuckled. Then I guess I better stay close and supervise. That night, Isla couldn't sleep. She sat cross-legged on her bed, staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars on her ceiling. Then, without a sound, she slipped out of bed and padded down the hall. Sloane's bedroom door was ajar. She found her mother sitting on the edge of the bed, shoes off, tears in her eyes. Isla climbed up beside her. You okay? Mom Sloane wiped her cheek. Yeah. Just tired. Isla tilted her head. Dad used to cry when he was tired, too. Sloane froze. She hadn't heard Isla talk about him in months. I remember Isla whispered. He'd sit at the edge of my bed and say, You don't have to understand everything. You just have to feel loved. Sloane's lip trembled. That's beautiful. Isla nodded. Liam says something like that too, but different. Yeah. He says, you don't need to fix all the broken things. You just have to make sure people know they're not broken alone. Sloane stared at her daughter. Sometimes it takes a child to say what adults are too wounded to admit. The next morning, as rain tapped gently against the glass, Liam walked into the office carrying a small box. Sloane raised an eyebrow. What's that? He placed it on her desk. Something you forgot. She opened it slowly. Inside was the old team photo from her first internship, her bright-eyed and full of ideas, standing beside her late father. I found it behind the utility shelf, Liam said. Dusty, but intact. Sloane picked it up carefully, eyes misting. I haven't seen this in years. You were already becoming who you are now, Liam said softly. But somewhere along the way, you started running from her. Sloane looked at him. Why do we do that? Because becoming powerful feels safer than becoming vulnerable, until you realize the real power is vulnerability. Later that afternoon, the mentorship team presented its first completed project, a data-driven community app built by interns who once thought they had no future in tech. Sloane watched from the back as one of them, a shy girl named Rima, stood before the crowd and said, I thought this place would break me. Instead, it saw me. Everyone clapped. Sloane turned to Liam. You think this will last? He gave a small smile. If we keep choosing people over profits, yes, it will. That night, Isla handed her mom a sealed envelope. What's this? Sloane asked. Just something I wrote. Inside was a single line. Thank you for letting me love someone new without forgetting someone old. Sloane's eyes blurred, and just like that, something heavy inside her was lifted. Back in his small apartment, Liam tucked Rosie's photo into a new frame beside Isla's latest drawing. 2 hearts, 1 red, 1 blue, holding hands. Above them, found families are still real, and below it in big, hopeful letters, love makes room. I want to meet her. The words left Liam's mouth before he fully processed what they meant. He sat across from Sloane in her office, the walls glowing warm under late afternoon light. Isla was sketching quietly in the corner, unaware her world was about to shift again. Sloane blinked. Who? Your mother? Silence. Sloane looked down, smoothing a non-existent wrinkle on her blouse. That's not necessary, I know, Liam said gently. But maybe it's time. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she watched Isla, who was now coloring in a makeshift superhero cape on a stick figure labeled Me. A pang of something old and unfinished flickered behind Sloane's eyes. She was never cruel, Sloane said finally. Just cold. Measured. Everything had a cost. Liam nodded. But you still kept her picture in your drawer. That stopped her. He had seen it once. A black and white photo barely visible behind a folder labeled Investor Risk Assessments. Sloane exhaled. Maybe I wanted proof that I came from somewhere. You did, Liam said softly. But where you're going matters more. The following weekend, they drove upstate to a quiet retirement home nestled near a lake. Hila stayed with Evelyn, who had insisted she wanted to teach the kid how to bake without burning the building down. Sloane and Liam walked slowly down a gravel path, the leaves whispering overhead. Her mother, Elaine Hale, was waiting on a bench near the water. Still upright, still elegant, with eyes that scanned like spreadsheets but occasionally softened around the edges. When she saw Sloane, she stood unsure whether to extend a hand or a hug. "You came," Elaine said simply. "I brought someone," Sloane replied. Liam stepped forward and offered his hand. Liam Cole. Elaine hesitated, then shook it. The janitor turned pioneer. Liam didn't flinch. Titles are like ceilings. Eventually you either break through or accept the view. Elaine blinked, then, to everyone's surprise, gave a small laugh. They sat. The conversation that followed was cautious but surprisingly real. Elaine asked about the program. About Isla. About the world her daughter was building without a man in a suit behind her. Then came the moment Sloane had avoided for decades. "You always said I was too emotional," she said quietly. "Too impulsive." Elaine looked out over the lake. "I did," she admitted, "because I was terrified you'd end up like me. Alone. Hardened, mistaking strength for silence." Sloane's breath caught. "But I was wrong," Elaine added. "You didn't become me. You became better." A tear slipped down Sloane's cheek before she could stop it. "I didn't think you knew how to say things like that." Elaine gave a wry smile. "Neither did I." On the drive back, Sloane was quiet. Liam kept one hand on the wheel and one thought close to his chest. She finally spoke. "You think it's possible to rebuild something that never existed?" He glanced at her. "Not rebuild. Build for the first time. From truth." Back in the city, something was shifting. The mentorship program was gaining traction far beyond Marchand Global. Universities were calling. Journalists were inquiring. One viral video of Isla explaining a budgeting app to a group of teens had racked up over 1 million views. But not everyone was clapping. Jason Hale reappeared this time at a shareholder meeting. "Let's be honest," he said coolly to the room. "Marchand Global was built by executives, not janitors. We need to course correct before sentimentality erodes strategy." Sloane stood, tall, unapologetic. "You're wrong," she said simply. "This company wasn't built by executives. It was built by people, quiet ones, smart ones, janitors, and geniuses, sometimes both in one person." She turned to the board. "We used to ask, how do we stay ahead? But the better question is, who have we left behind?" Liam reminded us that real progress includes everyone, and that's the only future worth fighting for. Applause. From the board. From the investors. And from one corner of the room, Elaine Hale standing quietly with Evelyn. Jason's smile faded. That night, Sloane found Liam cleaning out a closet in the mentorship wing. Not because he had to, because it gave him peace. She leaned against the doorframe. "You're still mopping floors." He glanced up. "Some stains you have to face, not delicate." She smiled. "I think I've been waiting my whole life to meet someone who believed that." He stood, brushed dust from his hands, and stepped closer. "What are we doing, Sloane?" Her voice softened. "Building something." Together, she nodded, and then she kissed him. Not with desperation, but with a quiet sense of recognition, like two people who had been walking the same road in opposite directions and finally met at the turn. Later, as they watched Isla fall asleep on the couch, head tilted, arms around a stuffed raccoon, Sloane whispered, "She said something yesterday. I couldn't forget it." Liam turned. "What was it?" she said. "I think love is when someone remembers all your sad parts but doesn't try to fix them. Just holds them with you until they don't feel sharp anymore." Liam blinked. "Sounds like someone I know," he said softly. Sloane smiled, eyes shining. "Maybe it runs in the family now." It happened on a Tuesday. Liam had just finished helping a group of interns design a pitch deck for their first startup proposal. Sloane was in a strategy meeting. Isla was in the corner room of the mentorship wing teaching a younger kid how to use a whiteboard like a comic strip. And then the ceiling cracked figuratively first and then almost literally. The company's central system was hit by a data breach. At first it was just a flicker in the firewall, then a full network lockdown. Sensitive files were flagged, client data potentially exposed. Marchand Global spiraled into emergency mode. Sloane burst into the mentorship lab, breath, shallow voice, sharp. "We're under attack." Liam stood slowly, sensing the chaos before he even heard it. "Internal or external?" he asked. "We don't know yet." But the security team found something strange. She held out her tablet. On the screen was a data trail, a recurring loop, one that had been running in the background of the mentorship server disguised as a diagnostic. "It's not just a bug," she whispered. "It's a ghost file. Someone built it to leak selectively and make it look like our interns were behind it." Liam's eyes narrowed. "Who would do that?" she answered without blinking. "Jason." They met him that evening in the boardroom where the air was still thick from earlier arguments. Jason Hale, pristine in his tailored suit, stood beside a digital projection of the code he had anonymously flagged to the board. "It's a shame," he said with feigned regret. "Such promise. But maybe giving unvetted interns root access was a little naive." Liam stepped forward. "You planted it." Jason smirked. "Oh, that's a strong accusation from someone whose resume used to say facility support." Sloane's voice cut through like steel. "He didn't plant it, but I know who did." Everyone turned. On the screen, Sloane pulled up a restored audit log, hidden metadata Liam and Isla had uncovered just hours before. IP trails, access timestamps, even a typo Jason always made when labeling backup files financial instead of financial. The boardroom fell into stunned silence. "You built the trap," she said quietly, "but we built something stronger, trust." Jason stepped back. His smile evaporated. "You can't prove intent." "No," Sloane said. "But the SEC might have something to say about impersonating internal security teams." Jason was escorted from the building the next morning. No handcuffs, just silence. Liam stood by the window with Isla watching as the man disappeared into the back of a black car. "Is he going to jail?" Isla asked. "I don't know," Liam replied. "But he's going somewhere he can't hurt people for a while." "His mom's sad." Liam looked over at Sloane, who was quietly sipping coffee in the corner, not saying a word. "I think she's grieving," he said gently. Why he was mean? "Yes," Liam said, "but sometimes even when people hurt us, losing them still feels like losing a piece of something we once hoped could be better." That night, Sloane came to Liam's apartment. No makeup, no armor. Just her in a soft sweatshirt holding a paper bag of takeout and a quiet look in her eyes. "I didn't want to be alone tonight." "You never have to be," he replied. They sat on the floor eating Thai food by candlelight because the hallway light had blown again and Liam hadn't replaced it. She leaned back her head, resting on his shoulder. "You know." "What's strange," she said. I used to think being strong meant carrying everything alone. Now, strength feels like having someone sit beside you in the mess and not try to fix it. Just be there." Liam nodded. Love isn't fixing. Love is staying. Later that week, the mentorship program held its first internal expo students showcasing their ideas, stories, growth. Rima presented an app that translated school newsletters for immigrant parents. Dante revealed a drone design for delivering medication to remote areas. But it was Isla standing proudly on a small wooden box to reach the microphone who silenced the room. She held up a poster board. It had no code, just a drawing. One hand holding another across a chasm labeled fear. "I used to think smart people looked like superheroes," she said. "But now I know. They just look like people who don't leave when you're scared." People cried. Real tears. That night, Liam tucked Isla into bed. "Do you miss Mom?" she asked sleepily. He smiled. "Every day." "Do you think she sees us?" "I think she sent you to find me," he whispered. And then quietly he walked out into the living room where Sloane waited, curled on the couch, holding a hot mug and something else in her eyes. A look that said, "Maybe this is home now." In a corner of the mentorship wing, a new sign was quietly hung on the wall. It didn't say CEO. It didn't say founder. It read, "The room where everyone gets to stay." 6 months later. The sign above the door didn't have a company logo. No mention of Marchand Global. No plaque of brass or steel. Just 5 simple words engraved in warm cedar, the room with no uniforms. Inside, the space pulsed with quiet light and quiet purpose. No suits, no titles, no formal seating charts. Just long wooden tables, chalkboards smeared with equations and dreams, mismatched mugs filled with tea, and walls peppered with hand-drawn posters that read things like, "Kindness is a strategy." "Your past is not a ceiling." We begin with listening. At the far end of the room, Liam stood by a projector screen setting up for that afternoon's class. He was wearing a plain button-down and jeans. No one would have guessed that just a year ago he was pushing a mop through this same building's basement hallway. Now he was mentoring future engineers, creators, and quietly brilliant kids who once thought doors like this would never open for them. Behind him, the door creaked open. Isla stepped in wearing a polka-dotted backpack and an oversized hoodie that nearly swallowed her frame. "Dad," she called. "Claire says you forgot the worksheet copies again." Liam raised a hand in mock surrender. "Guilty. What's my sentence, community service?" She grinned. 50 hugs, payable immediately." Liam scooped her into a hug so tight it made her giggle. "Best kind of punishment," he whispered. "Better than when you had to clean up Evelyn's exploding kombucha experiment," Isla teased. He winced. "Don't remind me." The door opened again. Claire Marchand no longer in stilettos and tailored suits, but in soft sneakers and a linen blouse, walked in carrying 2 coffees and a sketch pad. She paused when she saw the two of them. "I leave you alone for 5 minutes and you start a cuddle riot." Isla held up her hands. He started it. Claire handed Liam a coffee. "You're a terrible influence." "Thank you," he said, sipping. "Coming from you, I'll take that as a compliment." She smiled, but not the stiff, polite smile of a CEO performing wellness optics. It was real, easy, earned. They sat together on a low bench by the window watching students move about the space. Some writing code, some building models, one young girl reading poetry aloud to herself like it was oxygen. Claire turned to Liam. "You know," she said softly, "this place was supposed to be a pilot project. A proof of concept. Something to present to the board." He nodded, and now she looked around. "Now it feels like the thing I was supposed to do all along. Not the pitch decks, not the IPOs. This, helping kids dream," he asked. "No," she said, eyes misting, "helping them believe they deserve to." She paused. "I used to think success was about power, control. But you—" She stopped, then took a breath. "You taught me something else." Liam raised an eyebrow. "And what's that?" She met his gaze. "That love is not the reward. It's the reason." That evening, they hosted a dinner. Not a gala, not a fundraiser. Just a long table set in the courtyard outside the center, strung with fairy lights and surrounded by potted herbs the kids had grown themselves. Elaine Hale was there, dressed in soft wool and quiet pride, watching Isla teach her how to fold paper cranes. Evelyn Marchand arrived, late arms full of desserts and sarcastic commentary. "If there's no wine, I'm leaving with all the cupcakes." Even Jason's absence was no longer a wound, just a space where something broken had been replaced by something real. As the sun dipped below the skyline, Liam stood to make a small toast. He wasn't used to speeches. His voice shook just a little. "I used to believe my story ended the day I lost Emma, that I'd just patch holes, fix things, survive. But then Isla came along and reminded me that healing isn't forgetting. It's remembering with grace." He looked at Claire, who held his hand under the table. "And then you came along. You came. And you didn't ask me to become more. You just saw that I already was." The crowd was quiet, moved. Most people think legacies are built in glass towers, but sometimes they're written on napkins or shared over grilled cheese or whispered during bedtime. He raised his glass lemonade courtesy of Isla. "To the rooms we didn't expect, to the lives we didn't plan, and to the people who remind us that even if you walk in holding a mop, you can still leave holding someone's heart." That night, after the dishes were washed and the stars blinked like blessings above the city, Liam tucked Isla into bed in their modest apartment. She looked up at him. "Dad." "Yeah. Do you think Mom sees us now?" He smiled gently, brushing her hair back. "I think she never stopped." She closed her eyes. "And do you think we're—" "You know," happy Liam bent down, kissed her forehead and whispered, "Sweetheart, happiness isn't something you find. It's something you grow with the people who stay." And in that quiet apartment, in that luminous room, in that unlikely family, a janitor's story didn't end. It began again, this time with love. Certainly. Here's a professionally written, inspirational outro and audience call to action crafted in the tone of a heartfelt YouTube storytelling voiceover. Sometimes the most unexpected people walk into our lives not to change us, but to remind us who we've always been. Liam didn't set out to become anyone's hero. He just showed up with kindness, with patience, with heart. And in doing so, he changed not only a little girl's future, but a billionaire's world. And maybe, just maybe, that's the kind of love that lasts, the kind that quietly shows up again and again. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Where are you watching this story from? Did a moment in this journey speak to your heart? Let's talk in the comments. I read every word. If this story moved you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more soul-stirring stories like this one. Every subscription helps this channel bring you more powerful human tales of healing, hope, and second chances. Thank you so much for being here. Until next time, take care of your story and take care of each other.